Welcome to Outlook on Northeast PA, an hour-long program featuring your neighbors, your community, your newsmakers, your Northeast PA. We'll provide a better understanding, a clearer insight, and an informative view on the interesting people and places that benefit you, your family, your career and business, all from here in your backyard. Outlook spotlights the people, organizations, and businesses that give us a new outlook on Northeast PA. Now, your Associated Press award-winning host, Shadoe Steele.
And joining us on Outlook on Northeastern Pennsylvania, a dear friend of mine for many, many years, Alan K. Stout. He is a household word in the area, music columnist, former editor-in-chief, and, of course, air personality for station 102.3 The Mountain, our sister station, classic rock just down the hall. Alan, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Good to see you as always.
Good to see you as always, too, Alan. Concert for a Cause number 9. First of all, I want to jump ahead. Why is this the final concert?
That is a question that has been asked a little bit since we announced it would be the last one back in January. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And I'm glad you asked me that first, because I haven't even written about this in the Weekender yet as to why. We've been doing this really since 1999. It started off as Concert for Karen. We did 4 of those. We changed it to Concert for a Cause in 2003. We've done, this will be our 9th one. So this will be our 13th concert. And it's been difficult to maintain over the years in many ways because there are so many changes within the group of people that help make it happen. There are 2 bands left, I think, 2 or 3 bands. We have 35 bands. There are 2 bands left from the first one. We've changed with sponsors. You know, I work with these people that make the CD. And I've gone through 4 or 5 different people there at the company. And so every year I'm reintroducing the project to somebody. Some of our other media sponsors as well. There might be a different boss at this company or this director.
Like it's a fresh start every single year.
Sometimes it feels like it is. And I thought to myself, one of these years, we're not going to be able to do it. Somebody's going to say, no, we can't do that this year. We're not going to be able to get the room. We're not going to be able to get the sound. We're not going to be able to get the endorsements that we need, the sponsorships that we need. We're not going to be able to get the advertising that we need because we get all this donated. And wouldn't it be a shame if we made the decision that we just did the last one a month after we did it? That the one that we just did was the last one and that we just disappeared after being out there for 12, 13 years.
And not knowing that that was the final one posthumously.
Right, right. And so I said, you know, it's harder to keep it together. We've gotten very further and further away. 13 years is a long time. I had a monetary goal, and there's a little story about that as to why, which I'd be happy to share. We will pass $200,000 this year in monies raised. And we will reach that this year. And that was a goal of mine for a while. And so what to make the decision ourselves? So we made this decision back in August when we start working on the show. We announced it to the public in January, and we feel good about it. And so those are the reasons. Monetary goals will have been reached, and doing it on our own terms is really what it's all about. Not disappearing, but saying we're doing one more. If you've been to a lot of them, come up and see us one more time. If you've never seen us, come on up because this is your last chance.
And Alan, not to change the situation a bit, but, and this may be a bad analogy, but it is always good to go out on top.
Go on top, absolutely.
Absolutely.
You don't want to fizzle out.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, we've been able to maintain the number of dollars that we raise, and that's been hard. The music scene is not what it was 10 years ago. We used to make, at Concert for a Cause, somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 when we had 10 bands on the bill. We make now between $15,000 and $20,000 with more than 30 bands on the bill.
So you're adding more to get more.
To maintain.
Right, and that cuts down on the bottom line, Alan.
It does, it does. And so I think that it is an event that we have taken it as far as it can go. And we do want to go out on top. Our album just came out. It debuted at #1 on the local Gallery of Sound chart. We've almost always been at #1 with the album. We anticipate a big rockin' house at the Woodlands on April 27th. And at about 2 o'clock in the morning, we'll say, see ya. Thank you.
And this was not easy money. 30 songs for $5. There's a lot of work behind recouping the $176,000 to date, Alan.
Well, that's the thing about it, too, that I think we're all proud of. We're at about 190 now, if you count last year's show. And the money that we've raised through Concert for a Cause has been not in big chunks. We don't have a big, it's not like sponsored by Chevrolet and they walk in with $20,000.
Or Anheuser-Busch.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's most of those donations have come from young people in Northeastern Pennsylvania who have come up to the concert and bought a T-shirt for $5, paid $7 to get in, went out and bought the CD for $5. And so you're right. It's hard, real money that really came from the young people, mostly from Northeast Pennsylvania. And I know David Lee from the United Way always reminds me of how special that is to him, because he's told me they don't have that kind of fundraising that often with the United Way. A lot of it is corporate stuff. It's the donations from people at work, or expensive dinner plate at the Westmoreland Club, or the golf tournament. And they're wonderful events, and they raise great money. And, I support them all. But Concert for a Cause is a little different in that it hits a different demographic, and no one has to pay a lot of money, but it has added up to a lot of money over the years.
Sure has, and proving the old adage true that pennies do make dollars. It's the small donations that add up.
They do, and you do a show for 13 years, and you raise between 15 and 20 a year. One year I think we did 24, and all of a sudden you're looking at $200,000, and we see the results. We stay in touch with the people that we've donated the money to, and they give us progress updates sometimes years later.
For those who don't know you as well as I do, you have a rich history steeped in local media, especially at The Weekender. And we all know that in this business, radio, television, or print, that a year is a lifetime in this business. How did you get involved with The Weekender, Alan?
Well, I went over to The Weekender in 2005 because I had been the music writer for the Times Leader for 12 years prior. I started covering music for the Times Leader in the fall of 1992, and I wrote for the Times Leader pretty much exclusively all the way up until the summer of 2005. I served as editor at The Weekender for 2 years until 2007. I then went back to a different position at the Times Leader, which was a little more conducive to my life at this time.
Family situation.
I'm 43 with a couple of kids.
Yes, indeed.
I'm not 30 and out at every club in town every night.
Absolutely.
I did that for a long time.
Things do change, Alan.
And I enjoyed it. But I was proud of myself, at least, that I recognized that wasn't who I was anymore. And The Weekender deserved somebody that was, and I deserved to be where I wanted to be in my life. And so I decided to keep my music column. I'm not going to run the whole paper anymore, or at least the editorial side of the paper. But I'll still contribute a column a week and talk to some local artists and keep my foot in the door with local music. That's pretty much how that came about. Now, Concert for a Cause started when I was at the Times Leader, but they are owned by the same company. A lot of mutual friends there working in the same buildings, sharing a lot of the same equipment, computers, and so we started that together. The people that were at The Weekender back in 99, myself, who was at the Times Leader in 99, we started this event as one.
It's true, too, that it's really tough to get a break in this business. This was custom crafted. Your position years back as air personality with your own show on Sunday night at our sister station, Classic Rocker, 102.3 The Mountain, where you feature the best of the local best. That was tailor-made, Alan.
I was so happy when that opportunity came. I got a call in October of 2003, very shortly after The Mountain came on the air, from Jim Rising, who was here at the time. And he said to me, I'm going to start playing some local artists. And he said, do you think there's enough to sustain, consistent airplay? I said, sure there is, Jim. I've been writing about this stuff for 12 years. And he said, well, after the new year, I'd like to talk to you about maybe coming in and doing a show. I said, I'd like that. And so many people talk. Some people say they're going to do this or that.
And you never hear back from them.
I think Jim must have called me right after New Year's. He said, I'll call you after the New Year. He called me right after New Year's. And we were on the air doing the show that January. And we've been there every Sunday night ever since. And I have no problem filling up that hour with great local music. Quality production, quality songwriting. To me, on the level of anything else that you hear on the radio anywhere else all day long. Matter of fact, that's what The Mountain does. Not only do they play what I do on Sundays a little bit, a lot of stations do that. What's unique about the Mountain is that you'll be driving down the street in the middle of the day and you'll hear a Mighty Fine Wine song in between a Mellencamp and a Springsteen song. That's what I love about it.
It's a novel approach.
It shouldn't be, but it is.
I imagine that you get a lot of unsolicited material as well, Alan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But how can you really say it's unsolicited? This is what you do. I mean, people know you for doing something.
You're right.
You're the guy. You're the one of the few guys in town that plays this. You're one of the guys in town that write about this.
It behooves you to give it a listen.
People are going to send it to you. I appreciate that. I always thank them. They say, "Oh, thanks so much for getting back to me," or "Thanks so much for giving." I say, "Thank you for sending it to me. Thanks for remembering what we do." That's what I do.
Take us back, Alan. Now, Concert for a Cause, the first concert for Karen, that lasted until, 4 years?
Yeah.
And then why did that change?
We changed it almost really at the request of Karen's family. Karen was a friend of mine. We worked on a magazine together called Soundcheck. It was a local music magazine that was published here in Northeast Pennsylvania. Started in '93, and it went on, I think, until around maybe '98. It was around for about 5 years. And Karen was one of the associate editors of the magazine. She handled the design and the layout. I handled the editorial side. Karen's sister Lynn was the publisher and the editor. We were associate editors, Karen and I. Karen came down with leukemia in 1998. She was pregnant, and she lost the baby and eventually her own life. We did the first concert for Karen 4 months later after she passed in April of '99. It became successful right away. It wasn't something that really grew. It was big the first year, and I don't know why that one, because there's so many benefits in town. I know that we had a lot of people in the right place. I was at the weekend during the Times Leader. We had friends in local radio, friends in local television, friends with bands. Linda owned a popular club. Everything was there.
It is the connections that make this.
It really was. We didn't have to look outside of our immediate circle of friends to have all of the right ingredients in place to do this concert. We could promote it well. We could organize it well. We could get good bands. We had a great venue. We had a good sound company. We were on television. We were on radio. We were in print. With a couple of emails, this was done. I mean, a lot of people would take months to pull that together. We pulled it together in, a couple of hours.
Life is timing.
And so it became popular right away. It got so big that we had to move it. Eventually, we were over at the Voodoo Lounge for 2 years, and then we took it up to the Woodlands. But what had happened, to answer your question, is it became such a media event every year. You got so much publicity every spring, all the way from February, March, April, 3 months a year, that it was really difficult on Karen's mom. It was opening that wound every year. It was
reliving the memories, I would take
every year.
I see.
We used Karen's picture in all the promo material.
That I remember. It was
years.
Always, yeah. It was in lasting effigy to her.
Right. So you imagine if it was your daughter, in 3 or 4 years after she passed, you're sitting in your house one day, watching a television show, and the commercial for the concert comes on, and there's the picture. And I think it was tearing her apart. At the same time, I got to make it very perfectly clear, because Irma has since passed away, that she came to every one of them, and that she supported them, and that she would write a letter thanking us for everything. So it wasn't like she distanced herself from it and she approved it, and she appreciated it, but her sister was telling me that it was really hard. And so we decided in 2002 that we'd do the last one. And then what happened was the publisher, the Times Leader, approached me, and he said, "I understand why you ended the concert. I can't imagine how difficult that would be if that were my child, and I think you made the right decision." He said, "But it's a shame that you have this infrastructure. It's a shame that you have this ability to put something like this together.
Going to go by the wayside
and
now.
You're not going to do anything." Mm-hmm. And I said to him, "I know. I feel the same way. I just haven't figured out how to resurrect it. I'd like to maybe bring it back in some other form with the same people." And he was the one that suggested maybe working with the United Way and changing the benefactor every year and working with them, and they would recommend to us a local agency that was in need. And so we called it Concert for a Cause. And the cause would change every year. Mm-hmm. 1 year it was Vision, 1 year it was the Children's Service Center, 1 year it was Head Start.
A great idea.
1 year it was autism. And we would make this decision based on recommendations from people that really understood the issues and knew what agencies were getting cut grants and funding was slashed. And that allowed us to continue the concert on, and we never missed a year, but yet remove it a little bit from the Concert for Karen, which made it a lot easier on Karen's parents.
You alluded that two bands played the 12 previous. Flaxy Morgan,
Flaxy,
40-pound head, and of course the Brett Alexander connection as well, albeit the Badleys and then the solo years. Had you always had more bands than you needed?
Yes.
I thought so.
Yes, we do. And again, you get called up from people that want to play, and especially now, this time of year, when the publicity is starting to get out and the album's out. Well, we did the lineup in August. My first approach to that was invite everybody back. That's how the bill works. So
that's good. The established ones will come back.
Everybody comes back.
And then you have a certain genre, a format that you'll follow. I mean, you cannot have 10 metal bands in a row, Alan.
We wouldn't want that. We want it to be diverse. And fortunately, it's always worked out that it has been. But I'm a very loyal person, and so I don't care if you were the most popular band in town in 1999 and now maybe you're not anymore. If you've been staying with us every year, we stay with you too. The examples that you gave wouldn't apply to that because, bands like Flaxy and 40-Pound Head are still very popular out in the bars and clubs and the bazaars and everything this summer. We're lucky to have them. But the only way that we ever had an opportunity to put somebody else on is if someone broke up. And so maybe a band that played with us for 3 or 4 years, they disbanded, and then I'd have an opening. And then I would look for somebody good to put on. And usually maybe it was somebody that had been asking for 2 or 3 years. And I say, as soon as I have an opening, I'd love to have you on. And that's how we've worked it out over the years. And it's been fair because we've been loyal to the bands that helped us start it. And at the same time, it's allowed us to move forward and always integrate some new blood into the bill too. Because there's a band now that, let's face it, there are guys out there now that are in their early 20s in popular bands that were in the 6th grade when we started this concert.
Yeah, you bet.
And they have their own fans, and they bring out their own people to the show. So it's worked out okay.
Yeah, it's good to keep an open mind as far as the band roster. Now, give us the logistics on this year's concert, Alan.
We're going to be at the Woodlands on April 27th. We have 37 acts performing. We will go from 6 until 2 in the morning, nonstop. I mean, we have 4 stages, 30 minutes sets, and it's boom, boom, boom. As a matter of fact, in the ballroom, there's no downtime because there are 2 stages. So one band will be setting up on one end of the room while the other band is playing.
Yep.
So as soon as that band is ending, the other one goes. In the other 2 rooms, in the Executive Lounge, Streamside, and in Club Evolution, we have about 15-minute turnover because a lot of the bands, because it's a charity event, they leave their egos at the door, as Quincy Jones once said.
Right.
And they'll share drum sets and rigs and stuff because they understand we need to keep it moving. And so we're allowed to keep things flowing. The beneficiary this year is the Big Brothers Big Sisters Anti-Bullying Program. And we are really looking forward to it. We have a couple of special things happening. The Badleys, who you mentioned, have not performed at Concert for a Cause in 6 years. They're coming back. It's the last one. So Brett's always played. Brett played with Brett Alexander. He played with the Badleys. And then when the Badleys sort of broke up, and they never really broke up, but they sort of lay dormant for quite a while, he would always come and play. The whole band's coming, which is a great gesture. I mean, Pete Palladino, he lives out in Long Beach Island. He's going to drive, 3 hours. He's going to, flip all those expenses himself and everything, and he's going to play 30 minutes for free. And that's the kind of gestures that we get from people. Eric Klein, he hasn't been on stage with UUU in 11 years. He was the original vocalist for UUU. They're going to perform with Eric at the last Concert for a Cause. So I know there's a lot of people excited about the Badleys and UUU and a couple of special things that we have planned for the show that will make it special.
There was a great footnote, one of your blogs a while back, but interesting story about the Breaking Benjamin deal, that they were all committed to go, and then they hit big.
They did. They were supposed to play Concert for Karen 4 in 2002, and they got a record deal, and they were flown out, I guess, to L.A. by Hollywood Records to record their first album. Well, if there's ever a good excuse that you can't make the show, that's one of them. It's
right.
Not like the guys were sitting at home. So, we still have the original posters for that concert, and they're on it.
That's great.
But they didn't play it. And so 4 years later, they had like 2 gold records, platinum records. They were bigger than they were even then. And they came back and played. And again, 30 minutes in the middle of the night, no special treatment. They shared gear with everybody else. And they really, really had an impact on that show, as you can imagine. There were people lining up there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that day to get it. They were doing an acoustic set,
Sure.
which they had never done.
Hometown favorites.
Yeah, it was a great gesture on their part, and it's one that as the years go by and we think back on the show, that'll be a gesture that we'll always appreciate.
Alan, you mentioned this a couple of times, but Concert for a Cause 4, Concert for Karen 4, the biggest grossing concert thus far. Any reason for that?
Karen. I think it was Karen.
It was the support behind.
Yeah.
I guess folks knew at that time that would be the final one.
No, they did.
See, again.
We did. We made that decision. I wasn't sure. We made that decision very shortly thereafter. That's why I didn't want to do that this time.
So smart on this one to go in with this, and again, as we said, go out on top. This was a good deal on Concert 9.
Yeah, I feels right. It feels right. And, there is this tendency for us always to want to grow, and you always want to do better than last year, and you always want to do like last year. But the one thing I've learned observing these type of things is that other factors come in. You watch the Jerry Lewis Telethon every year. There are years, maybe 10 years ago, where he made more money than he did this year. The economy was better, or there was more interest, or he had better guests on, or, who knows what the bottom line is that, we stayed with it. And I know that I'm not alone, because I've talked about other people that are involved with us on this. If Concert for Karen 4 winds up being our most successful one we ever did out of the 13 of them, that feels right, because she's the one that started this all. And that was the one that a lot of the original people were still involved at the time. The original bands were still there. It laid the nucleus for this whole Concert for a Cause thing, taking it up to the Woodlands for the first time that year, having it become an event so big that Mayor Lighton from Wilkes-Barre declared Concert for a Cause Day a couple of years ago on the 10th anniversary. She should have that. And I like the idea that, I'm not saying that if we made more money this year I'd be disappointed.
Sure.
But I do admit that I love the fact that the most successful one was Karen.
You were in lasting tribute. And I think you put your finger on the pulse of it as well, moving it to the Woodlands. A bigger venue. I mean, you certainly want to thank the first is always the gracious. I mean, the greatest is Jitterbugs, the first, then the Voodoo Lounge, but then the Woodlands brought an entirely new, bigger venue to it. And I think by enlarging the actual cause, I think that too, by giving the venue more people, more folks to come by, I think that had a lot to do with the success of it as well.
The people up there are wonderful. I know that you do a lot of work with them as well, and so you know what I'm talking about.
Bet.
But maybe the audience might not have the opportunity to work with them on events like we do. And it's kind of fun for me to come on, because I don't write about these type of things in the newspaper. There really isn't a reason for it. But a couple of years ago, I got up there about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were setting up, and Mitch Kornfeld, one of the family, came up to me, and he said, "You're a Kornfeld today." He said, "Anything you need, you tell these people, and we'll get it for you." And it just runs so well. I mean, and they're enthusiastic about it too. The bartenders and the bouncers and the people that are setting up, they look forward to that day every April. They all buy a T-shirt, and so happy that we were able to do. This will be our 10th year there, and so our 10th show. We moved up there in 2002.
It's a good cause, Alan. It's not a one-shot deal. I mean, this is tried and true.
Yeah, it is, and. The people from Rock Street Music, they put in sometimes the longest day of anybody.
Sure, for the sound.
You think about the sound guy.
Bet.
The band comes up, and they walk in, and they believe they're 30 minutes, and then we have a buffet out for them, and we try to treat them well with some food and some drinks and everything. Some guy might be running sound for 6 hours, and, he's there all night, and then he might have to load up the truck and take it back to Rock Street at 3 in the morning.
It's a big setup time for all that cabling and wiring. You better believe it.
Lights and everything, and these are the things that I appreciate, and I know a lot of us do.
Music columnist from The Weekender, and my friend Alan K. Stout. He is the former editor-in-chief of that fine publication, as well as on-air personality on Sundays on 102.3 FM, The Mountain, one of our sister stations here with Entercom Communications. More with Alan K. Stout, Concert for a Cause, the final concert, number 9, at the Woodlands. When we return on Outlook on Northeastern Pennsylvania, we will be right back.
Outlook on Northeast PA with Shadoe Steele will continue. We now return to Outlook on Northeast PA with Shadoe Steele.
Back on Outlook on Northeastern Pennsylvania, our guest, my friend Alan K. Stout, music columnist, former editor-in-chief of The Weekender and on-air personality on 102.3 The Mountain, our sister station here at the Intercom Broadcast Plaza in Pittston Township. Alan, so good to see you here with Concert for the Cause #9, the final concert. You got a weekly column that comes out. Mm-hmm. How do you arrive at the content and the material, Alan? Is there always enough to go around?
Yeah, there is. You know, you would think I'd be nervous some weeks, like, oh boy, what am I going to write about? And I think I did worry about that. My column, Music on the Menu, started in 1994. And my editor at the time said, I want you to have 6 of these in the can before I even launch it, because I don't want it to run out of gas
just
in 3
weeks. Yep, you bet.
And so I don't remember if I had 6 of them, but I did have quite a few lined up. And we rolled it out, and I've been doing it every Friday, or it was every Friday for a while, and in the weekend or every Wednesday for 17 years now. I have some criteria that I ask for to be right about, and really it's all about the reader. If you're a musician and you're doing your own music and you want me to write about you in my column anyway, this is how I go about it. I don't care what kind of music you play. I don't care if it's my particular cup of tea or not. That's completely irrelevant to me. I respect everyone's creativity, and I understand that everybody's different. But I want the readers to be able to get something from it. So I either would hope that the issue comes out that you're playing a show that weekend, particularly for the Weekender. We're called the Weekender. So I'd love to have a story run on Wednesday and have that band playing that Friday or Saturday night, because that benefits the reader, benefits the band better, and in the club, and it contributes to the whole scene. All of a sudden, we're in the middle of something. Here's the band, here's the show, you want to read about them, this is what they're all about. You decide if it's for you, you go. The other criteria might be CD. And I used to want it to be in stores, but I've since changed that to at least a digital download situation, where if you want me to put something about your music out there to the readership, I want the readership to be able to hear it. So they should be able to either read about you and decide, that's interesting, I'd like to go buy that record, or I'd like to go to a website and listen to it. And that's pretty much it. You know, sometimes you'll get an artist that'll call and say, we're working on a new album. Okay, well, when's it coming out? Oh, it should be out in the fall. And I get this call in April. Well, you doing any shows right now? No, we're gonna do some shows in the fall. Well, then let's do the story in the fall. It serves you better. Now, some people, they get a little, they want to put the cart before the horse. We don't do stories about, I don't anyway. I don't like to do stories about people that are working on an album. I like to do stories about people that just released an album. It serves you much better, and it serves, again, the reader much better. And usually, to answer your question, I know what I'm writing about every Wednesday for anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks out. So I could tell you right now what Music on the Menu will be in May.
Sure. You have to have that type of...
I'm sure you do that with this show, too.
Absolutely, which took me to my next question. Between you and I on Saturday Night Live at the Oldies, I mean, I've done over 4,000 interviews in the last 30 years.
Love your show.
As you well know, and thank you so much. You've been a fan of my program since the day we met 15 years ago. But I got to ask you, too. I saw a lot of names in your blog as well of people that you do interviews with as well, like Billy Joel, which was not that long ago. Favorite interviews you've done, Alan? Interesting interviews. Any come to mind?
Billy Joel was interesting. I have stories behind some of them. Billy Joel was fun because I was in the middle. You know, you do these on the telephone a lot. The reason that a market like us will get an interview with someone like that is normally because they're coming here.
Correct.
And they want to sell some tickets. And so they're hoping that you run the story in the paper a week or so before the show.
Or he's got a greatest hit CD or a book coming out. You're absolutely right.
So and I'm sure yours is the same, my approach has always been talk about that first.
Absolutely.
That's why they're on the phone.
Then we talk about the classic material later on, because you've already... Exactly.
Build up a little rapport.
Exactly.
Show them that you're interested in what they're up to now. And I am. I mean, I don't have to fake
me
that.
Me too. I want to find out about...
Sure,
the guy's nice enough to call us.
Sure.
I want to promote the man's,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you do that first. And then as you get into the interview a little deeper, you could maybe ask, tell me this story about this or that. I remember interviewing Alice Cooper once, and I didn't ask him how it felt to be the godfather of glam rock or shock rock. First question, he would have rolled his eyes.
That's right.
I asked him that question, but I did it about 20 minutes into the interview.
But that's good, though.
Right.
It's like asking Paul McCartney what it was like to be in the Beatles. He'd probably hang up. You got to be kidding me. A Beatles question 50 years later. Are you joking?
Exactly. So I've built that rapport. And I was talking to Billy Joel, and about maybe 15 minutes into the conversation, he goes, hang on a minute. And he goes, you hear that? And in the back, I hear a piano playing. This was in 1996. And I go, yeah, I hear that. I go, who's that? He goes, that's my daughter. And I said, oh, wow, she plays. He goes, yeah, she's getting her lesson right now. And I said, wait a minute. I said, She's getting her lesson?
How about that? That's Alexa getting a lesson.
I said, the piano man has a lesson? You have some guy come to the house. He goes, I want her classically trained. I can't play that way. And we both start laughing. And I think he realized how funny it was for someone to think that, this man we consider him a virtuoso on the piano, at least in rock piano, that he didn't think he was good enough to teach his daughter how to play the piano. He had someone else coming in. I interviewed Steven Tyler once from Aerosmith, got on the phone with him. How you doing? Good. Thanks for taking the time. He goes, man, I'm jonesing. I remember that was the word he used. And I go, what's up? He goes, I just got off the phone with my manager. They had that single out at the time, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing.
Yes.
And
that was from Armageddon.
He goes, we're number one. He goes, I just found out we have our first number one.
There was the timing for a good phone call right there, whether you knew it or not.
I said, congratulations. And he said, thank you, man. I go, no, really, that's wonderful. And he goes, I appreciate it. And I did my interview, and then I got off the phone, and I go, oh, my God, I don't even think he called Joe Perry or anybody yet. He might not have even called his wife. I was the first person besides his manager to congratulate this guy on his first number one. That was pretty cool. Little things like that, Ray Charles, he was funny. I talked to him, and he said, are you coming to the show? And I said, yeah, I plan on it. And he goes, well, make sure you come back and say hello. And I said, well, I'll try to do that. And the only reason I said that to him was because I know that sometimes the artist says this, but then it's not possible. The manager doesn't help you, or the publicist. They say, well, he's not meeting anybody. He said, so I said, I'll try to do that. And he goes, what do you mean try? And I said, well, I'd like to come back and meet you. My dad's coming to me at the show. He's a big fan. He goes, if Ray says you're coming back, you're coming back. And he was very adamant about the fact that he wanted to meet me. And don't listen to anything anybody else says. I'm inviting you to come back. And
did you meet him, Alan?
I did not meet him because the show was canceled. This was that one at the Scranton Cultural Center. Became a big controversy.
I remember. That's right. It was canceled.
There was a big thing over the deposit on the performance fee.
Absolutely.
And it wound up being in the news. I wound up doing those stories for a couple of days too. It wound up being a page one story about how I remember my lead on the story was no pay, no Ray, because he wasn't going to come if he didn't receive X amount of dollars.
Sure. And
he died shortly thereafter. Mm-hmm. But at least I have the interview on tape, and him. I have cassettes of all these interviews, and of him telling me that he really was very serious about meeting me. John Bon Jovi, I interviewed him when I was 17 years old, when he played at Rocky Glen for King's College, and then I interviewed him subsequently a couple of times. And he's one of those guys that really remembers things, particularly KRZ, because that show was sponsored by KRZ.
That's right, and he was still living in Sayreville, New Jersey at the time.
And he remembers this. KRZ, particularly being one of the biggest early supporters of him. And when you mention Wilkes-Barre to John, he knows KRZ. He knows who some of the former program directors that worked here that were very supportive of him over the years. And he'll even ask about them. How's this guy doing? How's that guy doing? That's really impressive to me. So there are some of the ones that stick out. Honestly, though, some of the ones that I really appreciate, it might not be, and I think you probably experienced this too at your show, maybe not as big a household name, interviewing somebody like DJ Fontana.
I say that all the time. I said, believe it or not, the big stars that you think of, and I had everybody from, Michael Jackson to Barbra Streisand. To be honest with you, they were kind of rather mundane. It's the one-hit wonders that if you ask them what time it is, they'll tell you how to build a clock. You're right. They're the interesting ones that you may not think of.
Maybe they just haven't done as many interviews, so they don't have the canned answers in their head. But like I interviewed DJ Fontana, who was Elvis Presley's drummer. I mean, this is a guy that was in the studio with Elvis Presley in the 50s playing drums on Jailhouse Rock. And I just was so excited to talk to somebody like that. And some of my friends really didn't understand it. I was like, oh, this is a good one. I can't wait to talk to this guy today. And like, who is he? I remember them giving me a blank stare. I'm like, I am more excited about talking to this guy today than I would be if I was talking to like Eddie Vedder or somebody.
Me too. I just got goose pimples. This is the guy. I mean, not a household word, but this man was in the studio during the rockabilly rock of Elvis Presley.
How many times you talk to somebody like that?
Exactly.
And he's telling me stories about Elvis in the studio and how he was not given as much credit as a producer as he should have been, how he knew exactly what he wanted in the songs. He had a tremendous ability, a patience for repetition. You ever see some of these Elvis box sets that comes out, it'll say take 56.
Absolutely. And they're all so similar. It's like, how many takes did they do on this?
I guess what Fontana was telling me is that was usually Elvis's decision. That was his, now let's do it again. Now let's do it again. And I got to have that kind of conversation with somebody that was there. So those are the ones that stick out.
You said something that jogged my memory before, but when you talk about the folks that say, yeah, come on back, I'd love to see you. The horror that I went through when Saturday Night Live with the Oldies was on KRZ, this was about 10 years ago, 2001. Bret Michaels from Poison was at the Mountain. So very tough to interview back then. They were really at the height, like we always say, like I always tell people, you get these guys on the way up and on the way down. But when they're up there, they wouldn't call anyone. But he had this great 1 hour solid interview with me. Fantastic guy.
I like him.
And he said, Shadoe, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. You've been so great. Before the show, I'm going to have a backyard barbecue in the KRZ parking lot, and you can invite 25 pair of your listeners to come over, and I'll come down before the show, then they'll take me back up to the limo in the mountain, and you can give these things away on the air. He said, this is fantastic. So I go about giving all these things away the next week, and then it's about a week or two before the show, when Poison's playing at Montage Mountain. So I figured, I better just make sure and check on this. So I call his management. They said, oh, he tells that to everybody.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, due to insurance regulations, when the bus takes him to Montage Mountain, he cannot leave the venue due to insurance. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, I got like 50 people showing up for this backyard steak barbecue. I said, oh, he tells that to everybody. So we had to jump through flaming hoops to get out of that, and they were nice. They furnished a lot of product, but you're right. You just brought back those horrible memories of when you said, oh, come on back, we'll hang out. And then when you get there, it's like, who are you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why they do that. I wouldn't say it.
Me either. I wouldn't either. I mean, I can appreciate somebody being extremely cordial on the phone, but boy, that's really misleading.
And he has medical issues, too. I met him after that. It may have been that same year at
I think he's a diabetic, isn't he, Alan?
So it took him, usually they meet you maybe 20 minutes after the show.
Exactly.
He didn't come out for maybe 90 minutes.
I see.
And I think he was maybe, doing insulin or something. So he has issues, too, that he should have been more considerate about what he was even capable of doing before and after shows with you.
Well, you've certainly talked to the greats, and then again the folks on the way up and the way down. Concert for a Cause 9, the final concert. Alan, give us the specifics on this.
April 27th at the Woodlands, 37 bands, everything from country to rock to 80s cover bands to roots rock bands, metal, the same thing you can expect that we've been doing for 12 or 13 years now. We run, I think, a very good show. You get a schedule as soon as you walk in the door as to what bands are playing, what times, on what stages. It's only $7. We'll have the T-shirts there. It'll be a special T-shirt for the last show, of course. The CDs will be available. And we don't use the word proceeds. I've said this many times when I've talked about this event over the years. Proceeds is a fancy way of saying if we make any money on this thing, we hope to make a donation. We don't use the word proceeds. All the money goes to the Big Brothers. It will be in their hands on April 28th. The show is April 27th. It ends at 2 o'clock in the morning on the 28th. They'll have the money the next morning, every dime that comes through the door, because everything is donated. The bands play for free. The sound is free. The venue is free. All the promotion is free. The Weekender picks up the tab on some of the things like the T-shirts and everything. We don't expect to get any of that back. And so you can feel really good about contributing to an event that has really not a lot of red tape to it or a lot of, mumbo-jumbo with the numbers. The $7 that you pay to come in will help the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. Guarantee it.
Concert for a Cause. It is truly the final concert, number 9, at the Woodlands. My dear friend Alan K. Stout, music columnist for The Weekender, former editor-in-chief and on-air personality on our sister station 102.3 FM The Mountain. More with Alan K. Stout. Concert for a Cause, number 9, the final concert. When we return on Outlook on Northeastern Pennsylvania, we will be right back.
Outlook on Northeast PA with Shadoe Steele will continue. We now return to Outlook on Northeast PA with Shadoe Steele.
Back on Outlook on Northeastern Pennsylvania, our guest, Alan K. Stout, music columnist, former editor-in-chief of The Weekender, and on-air personality for 102.3 The Mountain, one of our sister stations here at Entercom Communications. Tell us about the release party, the CD, February 10th at the Woodlands. Was that a big success for Concert for a Cause, Alan?
It was a great time. And we started doing that about 4 years ago. We thought, we worked so hard on this album, putting it together for a couple of months, and then we were just putting it out. And so what we did was we invited all the bands to come up. We invited the public to come up. We play the whole thing. We put a video slideshow together of all the artists on the bill. So their picture is up on the screen while their song is playing, and we listen to the whole album, and we sell them there. And it kind of gets the album off to a nice start. We sell a lot of CDs at that event.
Got a good foundation there, sales-wise.
Get it out in people's hands, get it into the hands of the bands right away. And I definitely know that the CD release party is a big part of the reason that we've had success on the charts, usually right out of the gate, with debuting at #1 as we had done with this record. You sell a lot of them that night, right then and there, well over 100 of them.
Let's get the timeline straight, Alan. You started with a typewriter, a word processor, a computer, print-wise, and now 102.3 FM, The Mountain. Any similarities, differences between the print medium and what you do live on the air? This is kind of apples and oranges if you really want to nitpick on this deal.
It is a little bit. It's probably, to do an interview with someone on the radio is, you do it and it's done. Whereas when you do it in print, then you got to go transcribe it and then edit it and then figure out what goes and what doesn't.
Colorize it, make it extremely readable. You bet.
So sometimes it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun just to sit down and talk to somebody when I have some bands in over on the mountain. That's one thing that's different. What's the same, I think, is creative people. I come up to this building once or twice a week to work on my show, and I see people like yourselves buzzing around the hallways, or the people from Froggy or KRZ or the Mountain, or the folks over on WILK, and I know them all. And everybody's always got a little slide in their glide. It's a fun place to walk in. People like being here. You could tell that they can't wait to get into their office and get back to work.
Just like you. Most people like what they do, Alan.
They do. And so down at the Times Leader and the Weekender, with the writers that I've worked with over the years, I've seen that as well. I've never really, I run into the office. I get up early and get in there sometimes. I look at my watch and it's 4 o'clock, and maybe it's, I'm going to leave at 5 because I'm going to pick up my kids. I wish it was 2 o'clock. I was like, I wish I had a couple more hours
to do
to get on this.
Sure.
So that's the two things that are similar, I think, is you get passionate people. Over on the mountain, I mean, the people that they have on the air, Lou Fontaine, incredible DJ.
Oh, yeah.
Mountain guy.
Oh, yeah.
101, I call it.
Sure.
I learn something about music every time I hear him.
Jack Myers, I mean, these are the heavyweights in the business.
With the Beatles show that he does.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, Kathy, Mark Thomas, obviously been involved with media his whole life. So I'm proud to be a little part of the team over there. But it's changed me, too. It's changed me with how I look at music.
A different look inside the music business, isn't it, Alan?
Well, I don't know if it came so much from the mountain or from the column or both, but I get very frustrated with the fact that we're the only people playing this music sometimes. I listen to a record that came out like by the Underground Saints or by Kate's or the last Badley's record. I can't watch the Grammys. I can't watch something like that and see someone get up there and get an award that I know they didn't write the song and they didn't play any of the instruments, and it was put together by professional hit makers, and they hired this producer and they used every single knob in the studio to make the person sound half decent.
And a professional PR team that sculpted that person into this pop icon.
I admit it. It makes me resentful, and so it's sort of jaded me. I'm on Sunday nights on the mountain. I'm playing these songs, and I think, wow, I just played 12 songs that, in my opinion, are better than half the stuff that I'm hearing up and down the dial all the rest of the day. And this artist may have sold, 75 copies of this record at their shows. And so it's been incredibly eye-opening for me to see what great talent has been out there. But I use the analogy of sports. I wish that sports and music worked the same. If you're a 17-year-old kid and you live on the back roads of Alabama somewhere, out in the boonies, and you can throw a curveball, and you could throw a ball 100 miles an hour, somebody's going to find you. Some scout from some major league team is going to pull up to your daddy's house in his Mercedes.
Or they'll see you at the Tupelo, Mississippi Fair.
Yeah, and he's going to sign you, and he's going to say, I want you to come, and I want you to play for our organization, and we're going to groom you along, and if you succeed, and if you continue to excel, you will reach the top of the game. You will be pitching. You'll be playing in the Super Bowl. You'll be pitching in the World Series, because It's all based on talent and ability, and there's nothing else that gets in the way. Music does not work that way, unfortunately. There are people that toil away on independent labels making wonderful music that don't get the break, that don't fit, that don't have the right look, that got the deal at the wrong time, and the president of the label who signed you or the A&R guy decided to leave, and all of a sudden you're sitting there and there's no one at the label that's on your side anymore, and an entire career is over. And that is something that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, but it's the reality of music. It's what makes me love doing my show, and it's also what has made it very difficult for me to enjoy music on the national level as much as I once did, because I know that it's not the best. And I used to think it was, like everybody else.
Yeah, really good personal perception on that, Alan. Yeah, you're right. It's got a lot to do than just talent.
It really does.
Yeah, it really does.
And there aren't too many other things in life where that's the case. You know, there really aren't. Usually if you, in art, or I guess the arts are where it gets a little gray, unfortunately. Yeah,
I guess it is. I mean, it depends on, you know, if that talent is perceived by whoever the person is that's watching you. You know, some may think that that's great and some may not. But it's, you know, the subjective, objective argument, you know.
I've heard other people say this, too. I've said, you know, I can't even listen to that band anymore that I really love because it just, you know, upsets me that, you know, they're still playing at the local roadhouse instead of, you know, up there again.
Nationally, yeah.
So, but that's life. I mean, you know, we do our best and, you know, I play them anyway.
And your show is on, Alan, Sunday night?
Sunday night at 8 o'clock, 8 to 9 on the Mountain.
A lot of prep time, a lot of research goes into that, Alan. I know you're here quite a bit, and I know you have a lot of, you get a lot of mail, you get a lot of material, as a matter of fact, here at the station. A lot of research goes into that. Yeah,
I'm probably one of the only DJs in town. You do it yourself on Saturday. We're fortunate that programs my own show. You know, so I send the playlist up to the program director here every week, and these are the songs that I want to play. And if it's a new song from a local artist that's never been played before, I'm making that decision.
You better believe it.
I want to play it.
You and I are very lucky to have that call as to play whatever we want to play, as long as it falls in the boundaries and the guidelines.
Sure.
But you and I are very lucky, absolutely.
And I realize that. But, you know, that's the positive side of it. But you're right, it's a lot of work, because instead of somebody from a label coming and pitching to us this one song that they really want us to play, it's a local artist who's selling me a whole album. They don't have a single or anything. I have to listen to the whole album maybe 2 or 3 times to find the one song that I think might fit the station, and so it takes a lot of time.
I knew you when you were a single man. How's the family?
Oh, they're great.
Everybody's good?
Yeah. My wife Stephanie just recently had a birthday, and my daughter too. She's 4. My son will be 2 in April. My son was born the night before Concert for a Cause 7.
How about that?
Yeah, everybody knew that my wife was expecting. The day she told me she was expecting in August, this is how big this concert has been in our lives. She says to me, I think I'm pregnant. I was like, oh, it's wonderful, you know, it's great. And she goes, I think the baby's going to be due the week of the concert. I said, well, let's not worry about that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. And
well, you better not forget that birthday.
No, he was born the night before. I went right from the hospital right down to the Woodlands. He was born at Geisinger, so it was 5 minutes away.
Oh, that week, that concert, that was a win-win situation with that one.
I was passing out cigars at the show.
Absolutely.
And it was a lot of fun. I had no sleep for 48 hours. I had no voice, but I was going on fumes. So, yeah, even my family life had crossed over there a little bit. And people remember, because they'll, like, the Concert for a Cause will come around and someone will go, isn't your son's birthday this week? Yeah, it was, because everybody seemed to remember him being born that week of the concert.
It's so great to have you on the show. This is so long overdue. We could fill 5 hours of this, Alan.
I thank you so much for having me on and supporting this event. It means a lot to not only me, but 150 people responsible for putting this show on. I mean, there's probably 130 musicians alone. And then you talk about sound crews and people at the Woodlands and media sponsors and people that make posters and people that print the CD and at Sinram, and it's a big team of people. And it wouldn't mean anything if we were toiling away in silence. So you give us a voice today, and we all appreciate it. Thank you.
Alan, Concert for a Cause, it's number 9. It's the final concert. One more time, when?
April 27th at the Woodlands, over 21. Doors at 6 o'clock, and it's only $7.
And Alan, again, thank you for your time, my friend.
Thank you. I'll be
Alan,
listening.
Thank you, Alan. Alan K. Stout, music columnist, former editor-in-chief of The Weekender. and our on-air personality Sunday nights on 102.3 FM, The Mountain. Classic rock right down the hall. Alan K. Stout, thank you so much for being with us. Concert for a Cause, number 9, the final concert here on Outlook on Northeastern Pennsylvania. Alan, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Outlook for Northeast PA, an Entercom Pocono Northeast production. For Shadoe Steele, I'm Dave Fox.